here I am with Phil Eby. Welcome to the line, Phil.
Thank you, Josh.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
And you're here with Ames Construction. It's on your shirt there.
Correct.
It's on the truck here in the background, and
Correct.
we're at one of their projects here in Lancaster on Oregon Pike at the Riptide Car Wash.
Yeah.
And you guys are kind of bringing it right down the home stretch here. Getting ready to turn it over.
It's going to be opening up any day now.
Wow.
We're really excited. It's been, for these owners especially, these are local guys here that we've worked with on another project for them, and they've been great to work for. And this project has gone through a bunch of hurdles to get to where it's at right now. So we're just really excited for them, and honestly, it's a great for the community. This location's going to rock it. It's a perfect spot for it, and it's going to be good for Lancaster.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I know it's funny to me how I see these things all over the country now.
Yeah.
And how different it is than when I was a kid. It was a 5-gallon bucket, some soap, and a sponge.
Yeah.
And my dad saying, "That's a streak."
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
They are. It's been a nice niche for Ames. We've built a lot of car washes and have more to do.
Wow.
All over the area, really, and it's become a pretty popular model. It's a good investor model to build, and people love it,
Yeah.
And now with technology, it doesn't take many people to run it. It's a subscription, and you can wash your car every day if you want, or twice in a day. So it's been good for both the owners and consumers, I think.
It would have saved so many arguments about being late for church when I was a kid if this would have existed then. My dad always wanted the car to be clean. Always. Yeah, we'd be on our way to church, and we always were like about 5 or 10 minutes late because we had to wash the car first.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Just remember lots of those conversations. Oh, my. Well, so, Phil, you have an interesting story.
Thank you.
So, you have quite the journey, and I always think it's good to talk about people's origins and where they come from and how they have gotten where they are.
Mm-hmm.
I remember early, actually I would even say before my 20s, because when I started in the trades I wasn't even 20 yet. But I can remember looking at people that I thought were successful. Looking at people and I'm like, oh, I want to be there. That's where I want to end up. Or how did they get there? Or, and your story has some interesting turns and angles. And now you're here at Ames. And what's your title at Ames?
I am the Director of Business Development.
Okay. So that's why when I was talking with you guys about a podcast, they sent you. So
there you go.
I'm just messing with you. Actually, I, one of our sister companies works with you guys, and I caught you on LinkedIn and saw some of the posts that you were making, and was like, this would be a good conversation. So,
okay, thanks.
Why don't we just talk about a little bit about Phil Eby?
Sure.
And you were a business owner for quite a few years.
Yeah.
Before you came here.
Yeah. Before I came to Ames, just about 5 years ago now, I owned EB Exteriors, which is still a local business, for about 20 years.
Wow.
And that was actually the second iteration of EB Exteriors. I had been on my own doing that for a few years, then got out of the business. But then when I started it up again, went for about 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's a long time. That's a long time.
It is a long time, but it's amazing how quickly it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. So EB Exteriors, what did you guys do? What type of work?
EB Exteriors, it started out, for me, I started out of high school working for a new home builder.
Okay.
And it's funny because I grew up on a dairy farm, little dairy farm, and I
Lancaster County, that's shocking.
County. Yeah,
that's very
I know.
shocking.
Yeah, last name Eby, grew up on a dairy farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. But that wouldn't have been the life for me. It would have been bad for me and for the cows.
Yeah.
If I had been a dairy farmer, no one would have done well there. So out of high school, I actually a summer between my junior and senior year, I worked for a builder. Then I got into construction, worked for a builder, and really was drawn toward the roofing and siding side of things, and excelled at that. And then went on my own. The builder I was working for said he wanted to go the route of not having any employees, and would I be interested in working as a sub, working on my own? I said, yeah. And so I had a real break there to just get started doing all his roofing and siding, just working by myself, actually.
Wow.
And did that for a couple of years before I got out of the business. Come back a few years later, got back into the business. This is all related to what EB Exteriors does. Started again working for builders, which was good, but realized there's a whole market out there working for homeowners on replacements, and really transitioned the business that way. Not that we still didn't do some work for new home builders, but we were more focused on working directly for homeowners.
Okay. What was it that when you started working more directly for homeowners?
Yeah.
Was it because you felt like you could provide a higher level of service, or what was the reason that you made that shift?
Yeah, well, there's a couple things. One is just economically. It was the new home industry became bigger and bigger and bigger companies, and it was more like, look, this is what we're going to pay you to do this job, and it really got tighter. And
boy, that's a nice way of saying it was hard to make money.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of meat left on the bone. You know,
Yeah.
it was you were working for wages in essence, which is fine. And I don't begrudge anyone that.
I do.
The builders, they're going to pay what they have to.
Yeah.
You know, but the other concept was drawn to more craftsmanship, and working for homeowners, I realized that I could make more money. And we could do projects the way I like to do them.
Yeah.
You know, with like stuff that's going to last.
Yeah.
And homeowners were spending more and yet getting a better value, truly.
There it is.
So, you know, that was a reflection of me of wanting to let's do this really well.
I think that's something that I find very interesting about tradespeople in general is the desire to provide a quality craft.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know any stats on this or anything. I'm just basing this off of my experience over the past 30 years. But I have been, you know, the men and women on the ground, they care a lot about what they're doing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of honor and integrity that goes into it. And I've been on projects where literally there's been, you know, the truth of it is you got to make money.
Right.
And if you're on a bid spec job, you know, there's a spec, and it's like there have been times in different government projects or things where I have either been the tradesperson arguing with the architect and the engineer, or I have been on the other side of it where I'm like, okay, well, you don't like this quality-wise, let's talk about why. But tradespeople, that craft and that desire to provide a high-quality product, I would say that's a majority of tradespeople.
No, I agree, and there's something about you know, folks feeling good about themselves, like they're doing it the way it ought to be done. That means a lot. Yeah, you know, and I think many homeowners recognize that too. You know, if they bought a house that maybe wasn't built so well, you know, and some of the components were cheap components, and they realized, that wore out really quickly, and let's do it right this time.
You know, I think that's the interesting thing, even in building client relationships. It's like different people make different things, and they have different businesses. You know, and I've done different types of work over the years. When we did government work, it was, did you check the box? Yeah. It didn't matter. It was just, did you check the box? Right. You know, we've done some multifamily for venture capitalist firms and private equity firms, and they were about get it done, get people in, get out. Right. And then we have clients that we've done work for where it's like, what's the best product for what we're doing? What's the best situation? I remember one client in particular, and it was fascinating to me because it was actually a multifamily facility, but it was what I would call a legacy company, a heritage company. Basically, they were a family developer that was talking and thinking about the future beyond when they were alive. And so they're like, what is the best way to do this? What is this? What is that? Yeah. And, you know, money matters. But it was like they were willing to invest and be like, all right, we're going to pay a little bit more for lighting. All right, we're going to pay a little bit more for this. And don't you find that some of business is learning the people that you want to align with and that you want to work with?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That really matters. On the homeowner side with EB Exteriors, you quickly found those people that they're not going to be our best customer, and that's okay.
Right.
More power to them.
Right.
But other people that we could educate and explain why we like to do it this way, why we think this is best, and we could compromise here, but it's going to save you money, but it's probably not your best value. And do that honestly.
Yeah.
People knew we weren't trying to take advantage of them. This is you're going to get what you pay for here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the same in the commercial world. The commercial world is much tighter with margins, and I get that.
Yeah.
But then it's having the conversation with the owner about the spec.
Yeah.
Is this this sub's going to do a better job, or this is going to be a better long-term product, and you can decide now.
Right.
Mrs. or Mr. Owner, what do you want?
Right.
And so there's still that level of it there as well. It's interesting on car washes, talking about delivering a product. It doesn't seem like much of a building, but there's so much in it mechanically, as opposed to say just a garage or a warehouse or something. Not that those you want to build everything right.
No, I would agree with you.
But I was telling you earlier, like a car wash, before the building goes up, you have your concrete slab there, and the amount of conduit that's coming up out of there, and the amount of wiring and piping, and I like having skilled guys doing the plumbing and electrical here. It's vital, and people that build these know that.
Yeah.
They're going to make sure that's done right.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Yeah. Well, I think that is I say this all the time. It's a broken record. But I am an electrician by trade. Mm-hmm. And so when I came up in the industry, that was one of the big things. Like, we did a lot of treatment plant work and things like that. Mm-hmm. And so all of that was under slab. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite things to do was to look at a drawing and scale things off and plan it out so that it came up exactly where it needed to be. Didn't always get it right, but I had more wins than I had losses. How about we say it that way?
Yeah, good.
And it was, now I had some losses. If my bosses are listening, they know that I had some losses. But I think that's one thing. And again, that comes back to that care about the work. Like with these, it's not a big building, but there's a lot of stuff going on there. And anybody that's ever been through one of these knows, all of the functions and the things that need to happen for you to, and I think we joked about this, whether it was on air or even before we got on air, with car washes the way it used to be. And it's like, you take 3 minutes and you go from one end to the other. Yeah. And your car is cleaned better than I ever could do it on a Saturday afternoon with a 5-gallon bucket and a sponge.
It's true.
Now, I was not the best, but
you maybe didn't care quite as much as your dad at that point, right?
Probably not. Probably not.
It is amazing, the technology and how well they clean a car.
Oh,
really
it is amazing.
It's
it
terrific.
Is. And that is one thing my dad taught me, having a clean car, which I'm glad my truck is off camera right now. Having a clean car is important. And so I often, if I'm going to a meeting or something like that, I often utilize these. My wife and I actually were going to she was riding with me, and I was going to work for a project in Nashville. And we were just coming into town, and we stopped, and there was you referenced a Tommy's or whatever. And there was one of those there, and I was like, oh, just want to run through this. So it was right there as I was going to my meeting, and so I pulled in, and it was like, wow, you drove this many hours and your truck is clean. I'm like, yeah, that's right. That's right. The bugs just run away. So, well, we're talking here, and we're talking about your origins. I find this really interesting. So you are running EB Exteriors, and you were doing that for about 20 years. And we're going to talk about that transition a little bit here in a second, but you transitioned to the name that's now on your shirt from EB Exteriors, and is it okay if we talk about that a little bit?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but before we break into that, I have a question for you.
Okay.
What is one thing that Phil Eby cannot live without? A tool, a piece of gear? What is one thing? And I'm really putting you on the spot here, because we pretty much got coffee, sat down, and just started rolling.
Yeah. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go deep with that one rather than just a tool or
That's fine.
If
that's
okay.
totally fine.
And it's honestly,
as long as you don't say your cell phone.
We'll leave that out. My faith, quite frankly,
Okay.
I just through the ups and downs of life, of being a business owner, of times when things were tight, of the transition that we were talking about, of raising kids. I guess I struggle to know how people do life without having someone to lean on. You know, so for me, it's my faith in Christ, and I'm not sure how I quite function without that.
That's a great one thing. That's really interesting. I really appreciate your honesty, because I actually, whether you guys believe me or not that are listening, I had no idea about that with you. I mean, you live in Lancaster County, so, but I appreciate your honesty, and that I relate to that as well. A lot, if not all, of what I do is related to my faith. And when you talk about that, that's something that life is difficult.
Yeah.
And some people might look at us and think, well, you're weak and you need to have that. And it's like, but the reality is I can tell you that it's real, at least for me and what I've seen in my experiences. And I share that feeling with you. Actually, I'll share a little story.
Yeah.
My partner and I in the electrical business, we would do these larger commercial industrial projects, and they would have like a 1.5 year schedule or something like that, all planned out.
Yeah.
And I can remember winning contracts and going over those schedules, and the general contractor would ask us, so does this schedule work? And I used to say, I have no idea how people can answer that question without believing that there is a God, because the reality is, yes, that works. I don't know what's going to happen in 9.5 months.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, and neither does the general. It's like we're all looking at things and we're making our best assumptions and trying to do that, but it's like
we're going on a lot of faith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a good one thing, Phil. I appreciate that honesty.
Thanks. Yeah.
So, EB Exteriors, you're doing that for 20 years, and then you come to a point where you're wanting to make a transition.
Yeah.
Can I talk here? I hope you guys can hear me. We have an extra guest that has joined us on the podcast today called The Wind. I was telling Jake a little bit earlier, I'm pretty cold, and he goes, this is not by far the coldest podcast that you've ever done. And I was like, yeah, but the wind.
Yeah.
So you began to make a transition a few years ago to bring you where you are today. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, running EB Exteriors, and we were a fairly successful business. We were doing okay. We had maybe 15 employees by then, and
wow,
that's small comparably to many, but we added people over the years and grew slowly. But just some of the ups and downs of business, and some of what I was an okay business owner.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say a terrific business owner. Business owners, there's so many things you need to be good at or manage well for. And there was things I wasn't good at and things I didn't manage well for. That brought stress. And then the things that really energized me were more on the sales, promo, marketing side of things. And my wife would tell me, she would say, you're not really fully operating in your wheelhouse. So, just the thought of what am I going to do if I don't do this? For me, my identity got tied up in being a business owner.
Yeah.
There's a certain level of, you have your business. And again, that kind of image you project to people,
So, you said that before when we were talking, and if it's okay, you can say no. But can we drill down on that a little bit? Because I actually think that's something that's important to talk about.
Yeah.
Even if you're not a business owner. My dad was a carpenter for, I don't know, 40 years, 50 years. And I remember in 2008 he got laid off. And he struggled tremendously. Wow. I don't know if it's okay to share this, Dad. Sorry. He struggled tremendously with identity when he got laid off, because his identity was so wrapped up in what he did.
Yeah.
And you talk about that. And so can we drill down on that? And because I think that's important for business owners and people to hear about Well, what does that look like, and how did you deal with that?
Yeah, I don't think I recognized it, how much I carried that until I entertained the thought of not being a business owner.
Wow.
If that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it does.
I like, oh, well, what will people think of me? Like some of who I am, some of how I pride myself is that I have a business. A lot of my friends were business owners or are business owners. There's some level of success that's projected by being a business owner.
Well, and how old were you when you're making this transition?
Yeah, well, when I actually sold the business to Ames Construction, I was 50. I just turned 51.
So that's not a midlife crisis or anything like that. That's like a you had a lot of identity tied up in this.
Yeah. No,
Wow.
No, big time.
Wow.
So I really had to grapple with if I sell this business, if I stop doing this, who am I? and that was a challenge. But yeah, again, my faith really, that's something my wife and I prayed a lot about, talked a lot about, and that's really what helped me to recognize or move past that.
Yeah. So what would you say in recognizing that your identity was tied up in that? And I apologize if you didn't know we were going to go deep.
No, it's all good.
But recognizing that your identity was tied up in that, what would you say to people like, and I hear that your faith is a part of it, but clearly you still have an identity. And I think this is part of the struggle. It's like we have this identity, and this happens a lot for those of us who work with our hands. This is our identity here, but then that's taken away. So you either had to discover what your identity really truly was, or you had to replace it with something else. Which way did you go?
Probably a little bit of both.
Okay.
I think you mentioned something earlier about, as we're younger, we look at, people who we view as successful.
Yeah.
And so for me, part of that was, well, being a business owner means you're successful.
Yeah.
And yet it wasn't really, I wasn't being true to some of my gifts.
Yeah. Come on.
And some of who I am.
Come on.
That maybe the business, I loved my craft, and I was a good siding and roofing installer, really good, and I was good. I liked that, but part of the reason I liked it is because of the show it made.
Yeah.
Taking a house and look how beautiful that is. It wasn't. I'm wired to promote things.
Yeah.
And so if I
can relate to that a little bit.
There you go.
Yeah.
I think if I had identified that when I was younger, I may never would have been a business owner in the construction world. Or maybe I would have gone into a marketing business, focused more on that.
I strongly do not recommend that.
So, yeah, and then just recognize it's okay. I as far as who I am, my value isn't determined by the fact that I own a business or not. And I had to.
There it is.
I'm okay with that.
There it is.
And I am. I'm very much at peace.
I think that you just touched on something that's really important is we tend to tie our value to our identity. And I would say that was what my dad struggled with, was like, oh, I don't have a job as a carpenter anymore. I'm not producing this, so I don't have value. And that's actually not true.
Yeah.
I believe that, and again, this ties in with our faith, but I'm going to take my faith out of it. I believe that people inherently have value. I believe, I can't take my faith out of it. I believe you're created in the image of God, and that you have value. And so regardless of whether or not you believe that or not, let's just all agree that human beings have value.
Yeah.
And that it's important that we don't try to take that away. And I think that what identity sometimes does is, well, my identity is that I have value to produce this. And one of the big things that I've learned over the years of business and how I've evolved, like I used to have a screwdriver in my hand. I used to be the guy running the conduit underground. And it's like I've had to deal with that identity thing of, well, what value do I bring in sitting here having a conversation with you? What value do I bring? I don't touch my tools a lot anymore.
Yeah.
And I struggled with that as well. But our value does not come from what we produce. It comes from the fact of who we are.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the big things with identity that we have to be careful of, is that we don't connect our value to our identity. Because, and again, does that mean someone in a wheelchair doesn't have the value that you have that can, set the steel? No, it doesn't mean that.
Right.
Does that mean that the young man with Down syndrome doesn't have value? Absolutely not.
Right.
I actually, the company that I used to work for, their family, the one son had Down syndrome, and I remember being their family actually came when I was really young, and I so loved. They came to the farm where I was working and doing a little side business, and they helped me, and then I ended up working for them later in life. But I got to know this young boy with Down syndrome. Actually, he wasn't all that young. I think he was twice my age. But I got to know him, and you would be amazed at how much he taught me with his view on life. Like, he would walk up to policemen and he was enthralled with them and thanking them for what they do. Like, he didn't have some of the burdens that I had. And my reason for sharing that is his family, it created a lot of hardship and a lot of work for them.
Yeah.
They would say that he had tremendous value. Tremendous value. And I think that's the important thing, is that we don't tie value to our identity and what we do, whatever it might be. Because your identity is Phil Eby, husband. Do you have kids?
Yeah, 2 daughters.
Father, and let's just think about what matters.
Yeah.
Like, those are the things that are most important. It's not how many car washes you build. The reality is, you're going to die, and I don't think anybody's going to remember the car washes that you were involved with.
Right.
But what they will remember is the way that you've affected the people in your life, whether that is specialty contractors that you work with, whether it's your daughters, whether it's and that's what it's about. It's about the men and women that we're with here on this planet, and how we work alongside them. And so when you talk about your identity and having to deal with that, I think that's really important for people to hear, because I believe that we tend to connect our identity and our value together.
Yeah.
And that can be destructive.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's very well said. And I think I'm still learning.
That's good.
As I recognize my giftings more, again, my desire to promote things as part of how I'm wired, then that makes what I do even more valuable when it's coming out of that. That's not, how do I say it? It's not my value that I do that, but if the things I'm doing are coming out of how I'm wired rather than what I think makes me value or how people perceive it.
Come on.
That's going to be real. That's gonna connect with people.
Absolutely.
And so it makes me feel really good. Like when you say you notice some of the things I've done for Ames.
Hey, Jake, can you turn his mic up just a little bit? Yeah, there you go. Just like that.
Is that all right?
There we go.
We good?
That worked. Yeah. So this is a little technical difficulty on the podcast. We are going to go to commercial. Blackline marketing for the trades.
There you go.
There we go.
And we're back.
Right. So, yeah.
It makes me feel good because what I try to do there is do things that are authentic.
Yeah.
And really hit things. Every business has their generic posts, if you will, but things that are real and authentic and that hit people.
Come on, you are preaching
and
to the choir. I love this.
It's like, and that's what people watch.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that get all the clicks, and because they're real, there's something there of value.
Absolutely. And our culture and our society is desperate for it. Generation Z, they want authenticity more. Listen, we all want a big paycheck, but they want it more than that. They want to work for a company, an organization. They want to work for people that are real and authentic above everything else. And probably everyone always has, but it's pretty evident right now because there's a lot of fakeness out there. Yeah. So you talk about how you're wired, and I think it's an important thing for us to talk about. When I was younger, I only wanted to do what I enjoyed. That's what I wanted to do. And if I'm being really, really real with you, I was a lazy kid. I had chores and things to do. And my mom taught me something really valuable. I wasn't allowed to do anything that I wanted to do until all my chores were done first. She said to me, I don't care how long it takes you to do them. Here's the list of things that you need to do. Saturday or whatever day of the week it was. I grew up in a family where I had chores every single day of the week. Saturdays was a lot more. But she would be like, that's up to you. And it was actually a great thing because it taught me how to manage my time because I didn't do it right the first time. You know, I can remember days where I'm like, well, I'm just going to do it how I feel like it. And then I came to the point where it's like, I want to get this stuff done so that I can do what I want to do. And I would say when you talk about the way you're wired and the way that you are able to do that stuff, I think a lot about, in our organization, we work with Clifton Strengths. And they talk about your 1 through 34 strengths.
Okay.
And your top 5 are like, they're just natural.
Yeah.
They just happen.
Yeah.
You know, and so like, for me, I think my number 1 is a ranger. Like I can move different people and parts around, and it happens naturally. It's one of the things that made me a good foreman. I wasn't a great electrician, but when it came to managing a job and managing people, it would be like, it was just really natural for me to be like, all right, you go do this, you go do this, you go do this. But having said that, just talking about the reason I bring up my chores as a kid is you talk about the way you're wired and the fulfillment that you got from that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that we can't do the work that we have to do as well.
Right. True.
And I think when we're young, like we tend to be just wanting to do the fun stuff. If you're like me.
I'd say when I'm old, I like to just do the fun stuff too.
I love the honesty. Oh boy, that's the truth. That is the truth. Yeah. So you made the shift then, you dealt with your identity, you dealt with your value. This is a good story, Phil. This is a good story. And then you sold your company to Ames. And boy, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this stuff, but you're no longer a business owner. Correct. You are now an employee of Ames. Right. Tell me about that.
That's good. Well, I didn't anticipate. I knew the guys from Ames, the owners, and I had gotten to know one of them in particular pretty well, going to the gym, and but they weren't the company that I would anticipate would have bought EB Exteriors.
Right.
They're a commercial builder, and yet we had a great connection. They made a really fair offer, and they wanted to bring me in.
That doesn't surprise me at all. My experience with them is that they're fair guys.
Oh yeah, yeah, they're real.
Yeah,
good owners, good people.
You doing okay with the cold?
Yeah, I'm all right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's all good. Thank you. I've been colder.
Nothing we can do about it. So just thought I'd ask.
They brought me in to do business development. And business development is kind of a funny thing because you could ask 10 different people that do business development. It's all a little bit different.
Yes, it is.
No one goes and gets a degree in business development which I'm a little surprised, actually.
Yeah.
They were all kind of there's 3 equal owners at Ames, and they were all kind of dabbling in it. But they're all involved in the business, and they have other areas that they were more responsible for.
Right.
So they said, let's bring someone in who can give this some focus. So I applaud their foresight in that, and they really gave me a clean slate.
Yeah.
To go for it, and it was fun. It was challenging because it was kind of new, and commercial building was new for me. We had there's so many things that were kind of fun to develop. I told them right up front when I started, part of business development is just building relationships, getting to know people, going to networking events, and just meeting people.
Doing podcasts in the dirt.
In the cold.
Yeah.
But it's not that cold.
He's not that cold.
But I was like, guys, your marketing sucks. Our website sucks. We
guys,
don't have
do you
a lot
hear
of
that?
good
He
stuff.
said your marketing sucks.
So, like I need something that I can work with, and so I put more energy into that probably than they were anticipating, and I think it was really worthwhile.
Yeah.
Because it helped to establish us more locally. We want to do as much local work as you can. We work within a couple hours of Lancaster County, but the closer the better, and the more competitive we can be. Yeah, there was another thought that I had with that I just lost.
Oh, that's okay. That happens. Okay. It'll come back to you. It's interesting you talk about marketing and business development in that way. And Blackline, that's what we do specifically for the trades because marketing is so different in every other angle.
Huh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, but when you talk about that, you touched on something that I think is really important, that I deal with a lot with people, especially in construction, that do not maybe wrap. They're like, well, we have work. We don't need to. We don't need to market. You know, we have. Well, then I'm like, well, you know, what about people? Oh, we have people. You know, and it's like, but, and also I think specifically in the trades, it's like we don't want to brag. We don't want to talk about it and be like, hey, look at me.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if we're not promoting who we are and what we're about, it's actually not even about the work. It's about the right people to work with.
100%.
Because when you do marketing and you communicate your values and who you are, two things happen. And I hate the word marketing, so let's say it this way. When you tell your story, which that's what history is. It's the story over time. And so when you tell your story as a people, that is what they want to hear. They want to hear your story. Like, how many of us go to the movies? How many of us read books? How many of us do those things? Story is how we retain and know things. It's how things are passed down.
Yeah.
And
true.
so when we make that investment in marketing, it's not about trying to win more work or trying to get more people. It's about getting the people that fit Ames. It's
good.
about getting the clients that align with you. I mean, you talked about, you know, these clients and how these are the people that you want to work for.
Yeah.
And it creates less friction then, because you're not learning that. These people are like seeing you and they're like, oh, that's who they are. Well, I want to work with them as a business owner or a client, and then even more so than your people. And I say this because I've experienced it. It's part of why Blackline exists. I've experienced promoting and communicating who we are, and people then being attracted and being like, well, I want to work with you. I want to work for your company.
Yeah.
And it's like, it changes the entire dynamic where, listen, I got nothing bad to say against Indeed or Monster. Actually, that's revealing my age. I don't think Monster exists anymore. But job sites and things like that. But the reality is, you want people who are like, oh, those are your values? I want to work there. That's what you want. You want clients that those are your values. Oh, I want to work there. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that we deal with in marketing, specifically in the trades, where it's like, well, we got plenty of work. You know, we have a reputation, and it's like, yeah, but how much are you losing in friction that you wouldn't have if people knew who you were? And
it's good.
I think that's you know, and that's what's interesting. I've known Ames for years, even before you've been there. I'm pretty sure we've been working for them before you've been there. And two things that I've noticed over the past few years is, one, more people locally are aware of you than have ever been aware of you before. And two...
Well, that's what I love to hear.
Well, but it's the reality.
Yeah.
And two, I think that the type of work and the quality of your work is also being communicated, which then attracts... And it's not bragging, especially if it's the truth. That's the thing with telling the story that's important, is telling it real and authentically.
Yeah, and you know, and I love that you say that because that's really, as I came in and got to know Ames, you know, what story am I telling?
Yeah,
you know what. We have a lot of good commercial general contractors in this area.
We do.
You know, and what makes Ames special, what makes us a place that I can market with integrity, that I can say, this is who we really are, you know. And one of the things that I really try to promote, and that they just did it and didn't really recognize how important it was, I don't think, is just the way they build teams for each project.
Yeah.
You know, a project, even just a small building like a car wash, you know, the team that needs to be assembled.
Yeah.
From the pre-construction team to the trades that do the job, you know, the professional partners, like it's a big team.
Yeah. Yeah.
And putting the right team together, you know, it's just something they kind of did intuitively and do, but they're very intentional about it. It's not just next man up for the superintendent for this job. It's like, which superintendent's going to fit this client? Which superintendent's going to work, you know, has the experience, and putting that team together. Ames does a really good job of that. And we're good team players too, because, you know, sometimes we're we're the GC, but we maybe aren't driving the ship. Maybe an architect's driving the ship, or it's depending on the project, someone else is, and so we're good team players, and we're good at putting teams together. And that was something that was fun for me to promote, because again, I can do that authentically.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting to hear you say that, having worked alongside Ames, not as much as I would have liked, but having worked alongside them, you call yourselves team players. And it's really interesting because you're the guys. I'm not a big football guy, so if I get this metaphor wrong, my son will correct me this weekend. But you're like the quarterback, and you're calling out the plays, but you recognize that you can't actually score a goal by yourself.
For sure.
And I have seen you guys. It's like,
be a touchdown, but that's details.
Details.
Yeah.
Touchdown. There we go. There you go, Connery. I was corrected on air. But you don't. In your position, you could force it to be all about you, and I've seen you guys not do that. I recently did a podcast with a general contracting firm, and I loved the phrase that he used. He goes, "Well, subcontractors is a bad word," and I was like, "Really?" And he said, "We want trade partners." And I was like, oh, I love that, because he's like, we want trade partners, because when we assemble a team for a project, he goes, it's not just us. He goes, we manage the project, but we can't do it without the plumber. We can't do it without the mechanical guy. We can't do it without the electrician, the paver, the painter.
Yeah.
And he's like, we actually want to operate as a team, and we want partners in building the project. And I was like, wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what you're talking about.
100%.
Yeah. So, so you're doing business development with Ames and whatnot, and you're an employee now. I think that really says a lot about you and about Ames, in the ability to recognize your identity and go from being a business owner to being an employee for a company. And just an honest question here. I mean, do you enjoy what you're doing right now?
I do, mostly.
He hesitated just for a moment there. I don't know if you saw that, Steve. But I mean, I think that's what if we're enjoying it, it always is mostly, because there are days where we don't.
Right.
But it's like the reality of, well, here you are, and you're in a different capacity with a company promoting what they're doing. That's pretty cool.
Oh, thanks.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I appreciate that. No, I really do. I'm very fulfilled in what I'm doing, and enjoy it immensely. And again, like anything, there's parts of it that aren't one of those top 5. Did you say 34 or so things that have to be done that fall outside of that? But I'm operating much more in those areas that give me energy and that are natural for me.
I think that's something that's really essential, and I think it's really cool how you are doing something similar to what we are doing. You're doing it specifically for Ames.
Oh, yeah.
But it's pretty fulfilling, shining a light on the people and the organizations that are doing the work.
It is. I love in posts and things that we put together, I love the opportunity to promote our people.
Yeah.
That's because I get it.
Yeah.
Especially for the guys that are out there on the job site. But everybody, really, the project managers, everybody. But, the guys that are out there can easily get lost.
Yeah.
And they're really the ones that are getting it done.
Yeah.
And so, it's fun to highlight them.
That's really cool. That is one of the things that I absolutely love about promoting and shining a light on the trades, because I think it's one of those things we were talking earlier about, like the military.
Yeah.
And people not being seen or not being recognized.
Yeah, right.
And just, it's so important. I don't know if you know this or not, but it actually is statistically important. Construction is one of the highest suicide rates in all industries.
Did not know that. Wow.
And even more than the military. And it's like, and a big part of that, I think, is because we're not communicating the value that these people have. We're not telling their story. And so it's like, we're using the product, we're enjoying the things. And here's a perfect example. How many of you have ever had a problem where you thought about the people that do the work. Like, for example, do you think about the linemen that make the electricity work before the storm?
Yeah.
Or do you think about them like these people are real?
Yeah.
You know, when you flush your toilet, if you enjoy that and it works, think about the men and women who made that happen.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing, you know, my wife and I, we built a house a few years ago.
Okay.
And one thing that I found fascinating was what I didn't know about plumbing. I thought, oh, that's really simple. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
And it's like the importance of the way that the flow is, the way that the pipe is, you know, that it's not too much or not too little. I would have never thought about how much it matters that it's just right. You know, because and so just those things that happen that then help operate, and these are all things and knowledge that we've learned over decades and decades and decades and decades, because it's even different than when I started.
Sure.
The things that we do now, and it's constantly learning and building on that, and we really enjoy the lives that we live because of the men and women that do the work.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and again, taken for granted.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to ask you a question about a mistake, and I said that I would share one of my own, because I always like to ask questions about what's a mistake that you've made, because I think that's where we learn. And we really want to be honest about mistakes that we have made and things that we have done. And early on in my career, I think one of the biggest mistakes that I made was there was a situation on a job, and I wanted to look like I knew what I was doing. And I'd been put in a place, I'd been given some authority. I was young, and I'd come to a problem, and I felt like, well, I don't want to ask because I'll look stupid. You know, I don't want to. I don't want to ask that. I need to figure it out myself. And I will say it's a mistake. There was maybe more pride than I want to admit involved, or ego, maybe, but it was hidden. And the funny thing is, it usually is hidden.
Yeah.
And so I didn't ask the questions. And I ended up doing something wrong, and it ended up costing the company and me some money, and we'll leave it at that. But what I learned from that mistake was I need to swallow my pride, and I would rather look stupid and ask 1,000 questions and make a phone call or call out, and you know, and I had learned that from that moment, so that then later in life, there were questions that had I not asked them, had I not been willing to swallow my pride and ask those questions, there are situations, and this is probably for another podcast, where I even could have lost my life had I not asked the question. And the importance of, you know, obviously do your due diligence, try to figure it out on your own. But after you hit like 1 or 2 roadblocks, be like, there's no shame in picking up the phone and being like, hey, what do I... And especially if you work for a company like Ames where there's teams of people. Yeah. Because the team exists because a team can function to find an answer better than an individual can function. But it only works if each person on those teams are willing to communicate and talk with one another and ask those questions. So for me, a mistake that I'd made was I didn't ask the question when I should have.
Interesting. Yeah. So. Yeah, that resonates. I can think of many times when I did the same thing.
Well, what's a mistake that Phil's made? Well, and know that we're going to promote this so everybody in your company can listen to it.
I have a sign in my office. It says, I've learned so much from my mistakes that I'm thinking of making a few more.
I just got to repeat that. I've learned so much from my mistakes that I'm thinking of making a few more.
Yeah. So I could answer this all day of various mistakes. I think one that I regret that I think would have been really good for EV exteriors when I owned EVs. And we made our way through it, because I started out in the field and was out working with the guys, and eventually, you know, moved into sales and into the office. And I don't know, I was maybe 36 or 7 when I kind of hung up my nail belt, if you will. Not that I didn't get out there sometimes. I was really good at what I did. Yeah. I was good at roofing and siding and windows and the craft. Yeah. And making it look good and making sure it's watertight. I wish I had spent more time, even later, especially later, spending a day, putting the belt on, spending time out with my guys, training them more.
Yeah.
I feel like we could have grown more quickly. We could have done things more efficiently, would have been just more equipped to train even more people then. And I feel like some of that I could have done a better job of transitioning who I was as a craftsman to the guys that worked for me.
Yeah.
And I think it cost some growth. Might have even cost a few people that had worked for me. They're just, that's an area I should have paid more attention to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that that's one of the, I don't know if you know this or not, but Blackline has a whole nother team of people at Blackline Institute that does training.
Okay.
Because in our industry, I think that's something that we're lacking on.
Yeah.
You know, and just a little while ago here, I was at a summit in Texas where it was all about, leadership, and it was put on by a company called BuildWit that is all about training the next generation for the heavy civil world. And it's like, it's one thing that we really need to be doing is really investing more in training our people. Because if we're not doing that, there's this loss of knowledge that we're losing.
Yeah.
And we tend to think, and we're not wrong when we think, well, I could just do it and be done and move on to the next thing. But then you only ever can do what you can do. And this comes back to where we started. Like, this is going full circle right now. The legacy that you will leave is after you die, how you have affected people.
Yeah.
These buildings will disappear over time. Are you kidding? It's commercial construction. In 5 years, we'll rip it down and put a strip mall here.
Yeah, right.
I mean, but the reality is the things that we build will pass away. But the people that we affect and the investment that we make in those people, that multiplies.
Yeah.
And it goes to the next generation and the next generation. And like, if you affect an individual and then they affect 10 individuals, those 10 individuals affect, 100 individuals, and those 100 individuals affect 1,000. Like, look at multiplication and how that works.
Yeah.
And it's like, the reality is, that's why it matters that we're investing in training, that we take the time to slow down, and maybe we won't be as productive. But the other reality is, you're a little bit over 50 now. You can't keep doing what you did.
Right. True.
And so if we don't train the next generation, what are we doing for our future? So I think that's really important. So your job is business development and promotion. I saw something here. We see these Ames trucks in the background. They saw the cameras and they all started just driving over here. But
I have them trained well.
Yeah, exactly. And I see, but one of the other things that I saw here, and I don't know that a lot of people know this, so let's see if we can shine some light on something here. These Ames trucks have a yellow line. I saw this truck drive by. It said Ames on it. It had a blue line.
Oh, yeah.
And so I don't know, for those of you here in our geographic area, Ames also does mechanical and plumbing.
Yeah.
HVAC.
HVAC and plumbing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
that was when the owners brought me on. One of my tasks was to develop that department further, specifically the HVAC service side of things.
Oh, yeah.
Again, purely commercially focused.
Yeah.
And I said, well, guys, I said I'd like to do that, but nobody knows that we do that. We're Ames Construction. In fact, I sold an HVAC maintenance contract to a company just up the street from us that has been there for 20 years and said, we had no idea you did that.
That's a problem.
I said, if we want to grow this, again, we have to build a brand. People have to know we do it. And so through that, I developed Ames Mechanical.
Okay.
We kept the same kind of logo.
Yeah.
Different colors, but the same basic design of the logo and some different colors, and gave them their own identity. Which, again,
boy, there it is.
I think was good, again, for the team.
Yeah.
That what they do is really recognized as Ames Mechanical. So, we would do the plumbing here. And again, Elvin's back here. You won't find a better plumber in Lancaster County, doing doing the plumbing work here. And
Elvin
and
is also a
HVAC.
very Lancaster County
Yes,
name.
yes, he's the best. You just ask anyone if you need a plumber on a commercial job. But yeah, that was fun. And now since then we brought in some new people that are running that department. A new person, Chad, and it's doing really well.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, I love how you drive home my point about marketing and promotion, because one, you guys weren't really promoting it, and so no one, even your neighbor, didn't even know you did it.
Right.
And two, I would bet that there were lots of plumbers and possible employees that didn't even know that you guys did it and knew that was an opportunity there. And so again, in marketing or business development, one of the big things, if you're looking to remove friction and streamline, people wanting to come and work with you that align with what you do and the way that you do it, whether it's employees or clients, doesn't really matter if you have work. That doesn't mean that you don't need to tell your story.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons that we're sitting down here with you today telling your story, Phil. I really appreciate the way that you've been honest and real and authentic with us. I appreciate your discussions about value and identity. And also, I love since Blackline exists to tell and lift the view of the skilled trades through marketing for the trades and strategy and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I love that you're highlighting that as well. And so...
And we didn't plan that, folks, just so you know.
We're real and authentic. We didn't plan it, but I'm not having a problem with it. But in all honesty, you guys you're affecting the landscape of where we live. You're investing in your community. I really appreciate that. So if people in the commercial industrial space are looking to hire a contractor that aligns with their values, that does the type of work the way they want the work done, or if people are looking for a job that have those values and whatnot, where do they find Ames?
Yeah, amesgc.com.
amesgc.com.
You can find everything.
Okay.
Everything you need.
And I did find out
Thank
that you guys are also on Instagram. I think it's Ames Construction, something like that. We'll
Something
tag you
like
guys
that.
here. We'll list all your handles. And you're on LinkedIn as well?
Correct. Yeah, you reach out to me on LinkedIn, or again, you can find my email on the website.
Okay.
And feel free to reach out. I appreciate it. I'd love if you would.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks so much to you for having me. I appreciate it, Josh. It's actually a really fun conversation.
Oh, well, good. I'm glad
and
to
I
hear
appreciate
that.
what you're doing.